host, Tony Femino.
Thanks so much for tuning in to this edition of Voice to America, the radio program where you find out what the world thinks about you and the issues that are important to you. We hopscotch around the globe, talk to regular people just like you and me in the hot zones. We hear their stories, and then hopefully we can connect the dots. We've been busy today. Already stops talking to citizen journalists and voices in Baghdad, Russia, Istanbul, Turkey. It's been a big 48 hours for ISIS. It's been a bad 48 hours for America and the free world. ISIS has struck a U.S. Marine in Iraq and wounded 3 other soldiers in Iraq. So 1 dead, 3 injured as we speak. And the questions are obvious. How did this happen? Is ISIS targeting advisors? Are these advisors really advisors? Are these part of the special operations? Are we going to need boots on the ground? Will this change the American response? I mean, basically what it is a game where Obama is just scared to death of any type of a war. And so what he wants to do is try to just use either drones or the American Air Force and drop bombs. It makes sense. The whole idea is, we don't want to put boots on the ground because we know that's the ugliest, dirtiest, most deadly type of war. So we'll fly our planes, we'll use our technological advantage. Even better, let's use drones, because then you can control them from Las Vegas or Central Florida with a joystick like playing a video game. And then you just fly these drones and drop bombs all over, Syria, Iraq, whatever. That's what he'd really like to do. But the point is, can you take ISIS with just an air war? Can you take ISIS with just advisors? Or is it going to take boots on the ground? Obama continues to creep. He won't admit that there are boots on the ground. Instead, special operations are going to go in and out real quickly. He's still not calling it boots on the ground, but what else do you call that? So we're continuing to get this mission creep. The other question, of course, is that when soldiers start dying and soldiers are wounded by ISIS, do you continue to handcuff them? If you didn't hear our interview with Yunadam Khan, a member of Parliament from Baghdad, I encourage you to listen to the podcast of this program after the live audio stream and radio program of this. You'll want to hear what he has to say, because I asked him, these guys fight back? Are they allowed to fight back? Can they defend themselves? Are these guys sitting ducks? You'll want to know. Putin has done an about-face in Syria, he says. Is it a bluff, or does he really mean? He says, my war is over there. And he says his mission is accomplished. Well, ISIS hasn't been defeated. Al-Qaeda, the al-Nusra haven't been defeated. So does this validate what Obama has been saying about Russia? You really had no intention of going in there and fighting the terrorists. Your intention was to go in there and just prop up the Assad regime. Good point. You'll want to hear what Yuri had to say, because he says it's not all about al-Assad anymore. It's about creating Kurdistan, to compromise Turkey, to compromise NATO, to compromise the United States and Western Europe. Again, that interview is worth listening to. He's advancing the story. An interesting perspective you want to hear from one of our best Russian analysts. And ISIS killed 2 American tourists in Istanbul. These terror attacks occur every few days in Istanbul. Now Americans are getting caught up into it. What will this mean for the migrant crisis, for Obama's flip-flopping in Syria and basically waffling with support or non-support of Turkey, the NATO ally? You'll want to hear what OU's has to say. As we speak, Obama is heading to Cuba. He's brought the entire family. 2 kids, wife, mother-in-law. Mother-in-law? The President of the United States hasn't been to Cuba since Ricky Ricardo was playing the bongos. And we all know about the Cold War. We know about the embargo. We know about all of this. It's one thing, it's okay, I'm going to make a trip there. Like John Kerry did. At least it looked like it was business. It looked like he was serious. Obama's going on vacation. He's going on vacation. He's going to watch a baseball game with Raul. It's like 2 buddies going to the baseball game. He's going to bring his whole family there. Are we going to get the obligatory salsa lessons, with the kids? We're going to get that. Is Obama going to light up a cigar? He doesn't smoke anymore, so maybe no cigars. Is he going to drink rum? Are we going to get that? Just the people that he's bringing tells you it can't be that serious. When you bring the kids on a trip, it can't be all business. That's the point. Think about it in your life. If you've got an important business trip that you've got to take, do you take your mother-in-law and the kids and the wife? That's when you're trying to squeeze in 2 or 3 days at the beach and 1 day of work. That tells you what you do. Think about yourself. It's okay, I've got a meeting in San Diego in the middle of July. That's on Tuesday. But if I go there on Saturday, Sunday, and Monday, I'll bring the entire family. We'll go to SeaWorld, we'll hit the beach for those few days, and then I'll go do my meeting, and then we'll wrap it up. But that tells you, again, how serious you really are. That's why you take a trip like that. Obama also threw out bait. He sent one of those YouTube videos where he said that he is He sent it to Iran, where he said, look, I'm going to Cuba tomorrow, and I've improved relations there. I'm bringing the whole family. Maybe if you guys want to do business like that, we'll do our summer vacation in Tehran. Or maybe he'll go to Pyongyang and visit, play volleyball with the kids and the kid dictator. By the way, don't forget, we are streaming this segment on our YouTube channel. You can link at voicetoamerica.com and click the Facebook page right now. We can see it. The camera's up. It seems like we're operational. We started this last week, but it's another way to get this content. So we'll be up for about 10 minutes. If you want to check out how we do the radio show or get an inside look, go to voicetoamerica.com, click the Facebook page, or just go straight to the Facebook page, and we're streaming live right now on our YouTube channel. And we'll continue to do this. If you like it or don't like it, tell us how it looks, tell us how it sounds. We're okay with the feedback, or how we can improve it. For a Cuban perspective, Umberto is next up. He was born, raised in Cuba, moved to the United States, so has both perspectives, knows what it's like to live under the Castro brothers, also knows the American side of this politics. I chatted with Umberto Fontova before the program and asked him what regular Cubans think about Obama's visit.
For the Cuban people, it's a horrible, a terrible thing, and it's being expressed by Cuban dissidents themselves. They're appalled. Dissidents have taken to wearing Obama masks during protests.
So you're saying that there are Cuban protesters that are protesting Obama's visit?
Oh yeah. But you see, you're not going to see that in the media. You're not going to see that. The media is going to do its usual lackeyism for both Castro and Obama. And so most Americans go, oh gosh, this is wonderful, This is a wonderful thing, because they have no idea what is actually going on behind the scenes.
We always get this idea, whether it's John Kerry, who's visited Cuba previous, and now it's Obama. There's always this debate, as you mentioned, from our media here in America, that Obama or Kerry or somebody from the U.S. government is either trying or not trying to meet with dissidents or opposition members of the Cuban government. But there's never a straight story. We hear that they're trying, but then it doesn't happen, or that they do meet with dissidents, maybe at the American embassy. Do you know whether that's true or not? Is there an opportunity for opposition, people against the Cuban government, to meet with Obama or with John Kerry or any American official?
Yeah, as a matter of fact, Obama will meet with some, but another thing you've got to realize, and again, during this Cold War, this was known, is that all communist, all totalitarian regimes have what's called the controlled opposition. In other words, you'll throw some people out there that the media and outsiders will go, well, gosh, look at that, but they're not really, they'll mouth some anti-regime things and so forth, but they are actually controlled. They know exactly how far to go in their speeches and in their protests,
but they're real.
They won't get arrested and beaten. So it's controlled opposition, and these people will meet with Obama in Cuba.
So these are real members of the opposition. They're not fake. Is that correct?
Of the controlled opposition.
They're mild.
Again,
they're some of the more mild dissidents, as opposed to the hardcore.
You saw the same thing in the Soviet Union. For instance, Alexander Solzhenitsyn was the real opposition, and then you had Andrei Sakharov, who was more or less kind of a namby-pamby controlled opposition. Exactly the same thing is in play in Cuba right now, and Obama is going to meet with that namby-pamby opposition, but most people won't know. They'll think, this is wonderful, we're making progress.
What does Obama's visit to Cuba mean for the Castro brothers?
It's a wonderful thing. As a matter of fact, a year ago, when Obama first announced the opening to Cuba, Raul Castro yelled, "We won the war. We won the war." Raul Castro screamed 16 months ago, and he's been proven correct. They have given up nothing. The U.S. gave back Castro's spies, gave them back, and opened up the floodgates, the financial floodgates. The cash flow from the U.S. to Cuba right now exceeds what used to be the cash flow from the Soviet Union to Cuba in the 70s and 80s, and yet the media insists on calling this an embargo. It's laughable.
Do you envision a day in which Raul or even Fidel, if his health permits, would come do this, reciprocate the visit and come to Washington, D.C.?
Yeah, it would happen, but it's not necessary. It's not necessary for them. As a matter of fact,
so it's not important. It's not important to the Castros to come to Washington. It's much more important for them to host Obama.
Exactly. As a matter of fact, when General MacArthur was in Tokyo in September of 1945 in his headquarters, his aides kept saying, General, you've got to go over and meet with Emperor Hirohito. You've got to go over there and make yourself clear and make the demands. And MacArthur said, oh, no, don't worry. He will come to me. In other words, MacArthur perfectly understood the proper etiquette for conqueror versus conquered. And we're seeing the same etiquette now. The conquered Obama is visiting the conqueror Raul Castro. That's what we're seeing.
We saw yesterday Obama sent a video message to the Iranians for New Year's.
Right.
It's New Year. And he referenced Cuba. He said, I'm going to be going to Cuba this week. That's an example of my willingness and my ability to think differently than maybe some previous American politicians. And I'm willing to do something similar, say, in Iran. Do you think Obama views Cuba as his little test case for bigger fish out there, like Iran?
Of course he is, and the rest of the world is taking notice. One of my favorite phrases from Donald Trump, who I don't support, by the way, but I like some of the things he says. He says, the entire world is laughing at us. That's exactly true. He's referring primarily to trade deals and so forth, but it is exactly the case when it comes to the opening to Cuba. Cuba stole, folks, most people don't know this, Cuba stole at gunpoint $7 billion from U.S. businessmen in 1960 and murdered and tortured a few U.S. citizens. That's why the embargo was put in place in the first place. None of this has been addressed.
Yeah, here in America, Umberto, what I always hear at least is that policy from 50 or 60 years ago, including what you mentioned, the reason for the embargo and what happened in 59 and in 60, it hasn't worked. And you hear Obama say the same thing. And because it hasn't worked, we have to completely try something new. In other words, we have to forget the past and try something completely new because we've exhausted what you're talking about. Looking at 1959, looking at 1960, looking at all that money in the American businesses that were taken. We just have to forget it because it's been going on for so long, and we have to start fresh. What do you say to that policy, which is basically what Obama is trying to sell? Forget the past, start fresh.
Right. I call the U.S. embargo the absolute crown jewel of post-war U.S. foreign policy. Few foreign policy initiatives in recent U.S. history has been as phenomenally successful as the U.S. embargo. It has saved the U.S. taxpayer billions. You see, one of the few provisions that are still in effect from the embargo is that we do not extend credit. We sell Cuba. We're one of Cuba's, we have been for a decade, one of Cuba's top food suppliers. But it's got to be cash on the barrel, baby. The rest of the world, on the other hand, has sold Castro on credit, and without exception, they have been stiffed. The Soviet Union wrote off 30 billion. I shouldn't say the Soviet Union. Russia wrote off 30 billion. Japan wrote off, I think, 6 billion that Castro owed them. The only people in the world who have not been stiffed by Castro are the American taxpayers because of the phenomenally successful Cuba embargo, which is now being trashed by Obama.
Do you think it's significant that Obama is not just visiting himself, but he's bringing both his children, his wife, and his mother-in-law on this trip?
It signifies that, again, that's part of opening the financial floodgate. He's saying, look, Cuba is a wonderful tourist destination, Americans. Come on down.
That's Umberto, our Cuban voice, on Obama's big trip to Cuba.
Where the world comes to talk.